Welcome to the Live Courageously podcast show number 26 of 2023. I'm your host, John Duffy, and this is the 42nd Live Courageously podcast show since I started the show 1.5 years ago. Live Courageously has been the conscious theme of my life for the last 3 years since the beginning of the pandemic, and an unconscious theme of my life for most of my life. Courage is the first of human qualities because it is the quality which guarantees all others. So let's meet today my courageous guest, Greg Duncan. Captain Greg Duncan completed U.S. Coast Guard basic training in Port Security School in 1990. In 1991, he received the Reserve Officer Commission to Ensign and orders to the U.S. Naval Coastal Warfare and Harbor Defense Unit as a unit facility security weapons and force protection officer. In 2002, he received orders to active duty and reported to headquarters in Washington as a staff officer in the Port Security and Homeland Security Ops and Tactics Directorate. And he also co-chaired the Underwater Port Security Work Group that added diver and sonar capabilities to enhance underwater security. He also managed an $11 million budget, drafted the 2004 Maritime Transportation Security Act and Doctrine to pursue counterterrorism capabilities for maritime first responders. In 2004, he promoted and accessed into active duty, and he received orders to 1st Coast Guard Counterterrorism Unit, Maritime Security Response Team as the Assistant Ops and Logistic Officer. He also executed National Special Security Events, NSSE missions with the U.S. Secret Service, and he additionally completed dive school. Greg responded to catastrophic level 1 emergencies for fires, floods, and hurricanes in California, Texas, Georgia, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. He graduated from the National Defense University Reserve Component National Security Course in Washington, D.C. In 2008, he received orders to Sector Honolulu Command Cadre as Senior Reserve Officer, and duties were oversight and management of reserve forces in the Hawaiian Islands. In 2020, CDR Duncan was selected for the Senior Defense Official Defense Attaché program and returned to active duty for language school and attaché training in Washington, D.C. He is listed as a first in Coast Guard history pages, and in May 2021 was promoted to captain. Greg recently paused his civilian career as a SAG-AFTRA credited actor, a producer, a writer, an emergency management business consultant, and an adjunct professor at Azusa Pacific University, teaching CT, law enforcement, and criminal justice courses. And Greg graduated from California State University, Long Beach, with a Bachelor's of Science degree in criminal justice, security management, and earned a master's degree in public administration from Cal State University, Northridge. His personal awards include Coast Guard Commendation Medals, Coast Guard Achievement Medals, Navy and Marine Achievement Medal, Global War Terror Service Medal, National Defense Service Medal, Armed Forces Expeditionary Service Medal, Humanitarian Service Medal, and multiple other team or volunteer service awards. Greg has 3 young adult children. He hails from Chicago, Illinois, and he grew up in sunny California. Greetings, brother. A pleasure to have you on my show. Wow, man, that's your abbreviated. I abbreviated your bio. And after reading that, I just feel like such a slacker. Man, what an impressive resume of education and public service, man. I commend you, man. It's an honor to have you on my show.
Yeah, it's an honor to be here, John. Just listening to that was interesting. And as you said, abbreviated, right? That's
it's very abbreviated. Trust me.
Yeah, it's hard to knock down a 3 or 4 page thing of what you do. And it's one of the hardest things to do is talk about oneself. So, but yeah, it's glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation. It's amazing. Thank you for what you're doing as well.
Hey, well, thank you, man. I always start out the show with 2 questions. And the first one is, where did we meet? Because most of the people so far on my show have been people that I know personally, and you're one of those. Yep. Do you remember where we first met, or kind of in what world did we first meet in? Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, you get around, right? You're not an idle person. I'll say that. So I do remember our first meeting. It was at, I think, LA Film School, where you did a speaking engagement. And of course, doing what you do is educating or spreading your world of what you do. And I think it was specifically line production type stuff, which you're SME, subject matter expert at doing that stuff. But I'm pretty sure that's where we first. But that was, I'm going to say 10 plus years ago, give or take. But then we've had subsequent, meetings and stuff up to including, like a few weeks ago. So,
well, we also met at, and I didn't remember that. Now that you reminded me of that. But we met at a lot of veterans and media entertainment events, Army and Navy game, a bunch of different other activities, and I couldn't remember where. American Legion Post 43. Yep. I couldn't remember what was the first one. But and I won't go deep into this, but there's something that stuck with me. At one point in that time, we met, and I know I was going through, and you were going through rather some challenging times. And we had a chance to get together at your place out in the valley, and we spent a couple hours in what you call deep immersion time. And all I remember, it was a very challenging time, both financially, family, personally, faith, all kinds of things for me. Yep. And that amount of time that we spent together was such a special time for me. And in many ways, it was like a turning point. Life started to turn kind of right after that. So yep. I really appreciated that we got that ability to connect that deeply on so many levels, and started us to, build that bond and connection, man. It meant a lot to me.
Good. Well, I'm glad. And it also ditto that, right? As far as time goes, very special time, something I always say, John, and which, especially that particular meeting at the house that we had to want to be present, right? And to be vulnerable, to talk about those things that a lot of, veterans, men just don't talk about, right? It's that add value, hopefully. And it sounds like we added value to each other's lives and to all those lives that we interact with, be it family, friends, work colleagues, et cetera, brother, et cetera.
Yeah, no, it was a special day. And then, of course, life, as I kind of touched a little bit on the bio, your life ended up moving you in some new paths. And, you went into so many other things. And I remember at the time, too, you were dealing with, there was the hurricane in Puerto Rico, and you were dealing with that somewhere in that period of time, which was a rather difficult event for you on so many levels.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That was an experience, within the Coast Guard, which oftentimes in the reserves, we get called back based on skill sets we have. Or the actual job that we're doing. And that was one that was stretched, not only the geography of that, but also just the capability of what I was doing in a national tier 1 emergency, which was Puerto Rico, which was literally, what I call a threefer, right? So I did Harvey, which was Texas, and then did Irma, and I moved up the coast. I moved from Texas to St. Louis to where I end up in at the actually EOC for Georgia, right, where Irma was, which we thought, something was happening. And then I subsequently, which is a fun story, how I ended up in Puerto Rico. But to actually lead that, what we call emergency preparedness liaison effort from the beginning points to where I was able to hand it off to what we would call is restoration, or once the initial response is done and lives are saved or things are put in place, and it's like, well, how do we move to the next level? And that's where I hand it off.
And the second question that I always like to ask a guest is, what does live courageously mean to you? And obviously, you've had a unique life of courage in so many different areas, and of course, living courageously can mean a lot of things to different people because it's a very broad term. What is courage? But I think your experiences, give you some great insight as to what that means in the world to live courageously. Maybe you want to share that with us.
Yeah, it's a good question, right? What that means, and it means something. And it's, I tend to look at things in different hats or different buckets, right? So living courageously, I'll take that as a personal question. Is, for me, it's something that I look at going, what are unfiltered, unfestered ways to live a life that you're putting yourself, and this is something newer in the last 10 years or something, but to be vulnerable, right? To absolutely be vulnerable, which, we talked about a conversation we had, but that's something I pay forward, sideways, backwards, as I always like to say. Courageously is that in itself in this space that we're in today, from men talking, right, is something that we all need to do as we touch those different lives in our family, not only professionally, actually professionally, because that starts off, and then the courageous part. You're going to do those types of things based on your skill sets, right? What's courageous to someone else may not be courageous to someone else, right? And then you look at yourself. Some people look at me and go, "Man, that's absolutely crazy and courageous." How do you? But for me, it's like I'm just working, right?
Right.
If that makes any sense at all. So perspective,
It does. Well, let's go back. Let's step back. How did you get into, because obviously somewhere in your early life, you made a decision. You made a decision to, while you were going to school, share that, and you made a decision to join the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
And, what was that for you that took you in that direction that's led to such a successful career of service?
Yeah. So succinctly, I get asked that question a lot, and I like to share that to my mentees. At any time, I'm always mentoring 5 to 10 folks, right? And that's a process, right, in itself. But I did that because someone's did it for me, right? Someone opened up that, and the Coast Guard was one of those things. I was working at that time for the police department, and my boss was like, "Hey, you should come see what I do on the weekends," right? I'm like, and people in public service, you got to have the day fly by, so you get to be kind of jokesters, or having a good time because you work hard, play hard. But that's what was the introduction. To the Coast Guard, one, and then just looking at what that mission is. What was the Coast Guard about from a reserve part-time perspective? And then I've had the wonderful time to actually go in and out of service full-time. But it all shows together public service, right? It's always been aligned. It was aligned to me young as a LAPD police explorer to actually volunteer and be of service and volunteer at a young age. So that public service part was for me something that I've always wanted to do. But at the same note, I'm also an entrepreneur. So how do you do that? So I was able to do that within the United States Coast Guard, going almost 34 years now. Looking back to add that, to get that, I don't want to say sense of accomplishment, to be able to to work within that public service space.
And what is, a lot of people who don't know, who haven't been around it, what's unique about the Coast Guard as a branch of service? Because it's a unique branch, right? And there's certain aspects that make it unique, but maybe expand upon what the Coast Guard is, what it does, and what makes it unique.
Yeah, so the Coast Guard is unique. It's a one-off in ways. Right now it resonates or resides in the Department of Homeland Security, so it's not with DoD, the other services, and it definitely is one of the uniformed services, armed services, I should say, within the fabric of the military in the United States. But in 3 or 4 buckets, the Coast Guard is a law enforcement agency. It's a federal law enforcement agency, which many people do that with some of the missions that are done. If it's out on the waterways, or sometimes even within the shores, right? We're enforcing federal laws that are applicable to, if it's maritime or mariners, or to just federal regulations or federal laws that we actually enforce. The other side's regulatory agency, right? Coast Guard's a big regulatory agency, regulates a lot of the industry, both on shore and offshore. From that perspective, the Coast Guard's a military service. They're always doing defense ops. They're deploying other places. We've lost, coasties, as we call them, in doing some of those operations. The big thing that everyone knows, the Coast Guard's a search and rescue organization, right? I describe it as a fire station type thing, because you call 911, you get, from a policing perspective, you call 911, you also kind of get the Coast Guard. You're calling that because someone needs, they're in distress on the waterways, which the Coast Guard, as we always like to say, we're the premier life-saving service. And that's what we do. We go out and save folks in that as well. The last thing is environmental. That's a part that a lot of people don't know about the Coast Guard. Coast Guard's an environmental agency also, right? We are always protecting, wildlife, fisheries, to keep it fair, as far as, as we next up to the international waterways and fishermen, and compliance with that, and vessels compliance and commercial compliance on those as well. So the environment side, oil spills, which people know, that was a big deal with Katrina and that situation, or BP down in the Gulf area. So not Katrina, but BP is what I'm talking from an environmental perspective. So there's my spiel on the Coast Guard from I know.
Well, to follow with that spiel, I'm going to show a video of that you shared with me right now, so people get a little bit of a flavor. That's kind of a pretty exciting thing. So let's take a look at that, and we can go further with that.
All right. One.
That's the wrong one.
Yeah, just in case you didn't know. So
there we go. That was a different one. We're going to come back to that one. That we'll get back to that one. That was a little bit of a surprise for you. So yeah,
nice.
Let's get to the one that we do want to exactly show. Hold on 1 second. And
it's okay to drink like some grape juice online, right?
Oh yes, absolutely.
All right,
man.
Grape juice.
Let's see if we can pull this one up and get this one going. Do you see it?
Oh, got it. Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah.
There we go.
That a kid like me can take his mic around the world like a big ass team and rock the masses. From Madrid to Calabasas, Tijuana, Mexico, who the devils in Tokyo say they know me though.
Those are some fond memories.
I'm in my life to reverse, well respected cause that's my word, and I'm sure you heard about a new sound go round. She might have left my hood, but she was born in my town. You didn't know how we was doing the scene. It's alright, it's alright. I know you know, I see you smiling at me. It's alright, it's alright. Here comes up, ready or not. Here comes the boys for the sound. Here comes up, ready or not. How you like me now? I say we rep the South. So what you talking about? I'm not running out my mouth. I know this without a doubt. Cause if you know these streets, then these streets know you. And when it's time to handle business, then we know what to do. Me and my crew, we stay true, old school and new. Many will call, but the chosen the few. We rise to the top. What you want, just in case you forgot. Rush the stage, grab my mic, show me what you got. You didn't know how we would do on the scene. It's alright, it's alright. I know you know, I see you smiling at me. It's alright, it's alright. Here comes the ready or not. Here comes the boys on the sound. Here comes the ready or not.
Yeah.
All right. So that tell us a little. What was that? What was that besides the great music with it? But what was that?
So that was a what we call a training film on. That we do on the higher end of the law enforcement spectrum, specifically I'd say counterterrorism type or a non-compliant situation, where we would send out teams similar to that. You train as you fight, as I would always say. So that was a training operation on how we would do some things from a Coast Guard perspective to deal with something in that environment. That's what it was. We finally were able to put some films together to do that. That was back in the day. That was proud unit, proud to be part of that unit, and to kind of help build that unit as well.
So I mean, there's so much to go into. As far as your experience, you've had so many. Obviously, in reserve and active duty. You've been a diplomat. You've obviously took over recently in the last 3 years. You had a pretty significant service mission that you went on for 3 years. Take us a little through those things that you've done in your life and the progression of your career in the Coast Guard, and the highlights and the things that you enjoyed the most about being who you are.
Yeah. So how much time do we have?
Hey, well, the biggest problem, Greg, always is I have an hour and I always bring on guests that I need 3 hours. So,
yeah, because right. And that's not even counting a commercial break, right?
Exactly.
No, it's So highlights, I'll hit that, just so keep moving. In no particular order. I mean, some of my proudest moments was being enlisted. I was enlisted. I started off the bottom level as an E1, E2. Thankfully, I had some skills and was able to advance some things. But I spent 9 years enlisted, and that's been fun. It's what we call a Mustang, right? And then you don't know sometimes what people are doing as far as looking out for your career or looking for different things. So as I realized what was happening, I was getting invitations from several friends to go into the officer corps and to add different value, right? But as a team, I like to say I'm a teammate, and that's been part of my part to share with others as within the Coast Guard, not even Coast Guard, but just in anything I've done, it's been mostly a team. Right, it's not an individual sport, if you will, and I kind of applied that to everything. And Coast Guard, just that. So I got an opportunity to go and get direct commissioned at some point, and go to knife and fork school, as we call it, based on me having already the education and a degree, master's degree. And then I got in the officer side, and just had some wonderful folks that looked out for me. That I'm still in touch with today, that thought I could continue to add value and in different applications. The end or the law enforcement type spectrum is kind of where I ended up. That's always been a good place for me, and to apply those things from that. And then just that, getting asked to come back to service after 9/11, which the service called back a great percentage, 89% of their part-time force, the reserve force, to come back, because we didn't know what we were dealing with, right, after 9/11. So and then that shifted the entire country, right, including the Coast Guard. And DHS wasn't even a thing back then, right? Department of Homeland Security. So I had the phenomenal opportunity to work in that spectrum, to get DHS stood up for the first time with Secretary Ridge as the first Secretary of Homeland Security, and being part of that team. The Coast Guard was the biggest element or biggest arm to get that going. So that was a rewarding time. And then up to including working on some of this, the national policy and changes of policy when it comes to protecting our waterways and ports and partners and whatnot, up to including this video you just saw, right? The team that was put together on how to the Coast Guard get better to improve some of their capabilities, and then that type of units were had added value. So always fun. It's kind of where we call this thing where it's like plank owners, right? You're the first ones to do stuff. There's been a lot of plank owner things in my career, up to including dive school, which was probably one of the hardest but funnest schools I've ever been to. If you can look at being a military diver or Navy diver or Coast Guard diver. So challenging, especially in the underwater environment. So that's another fun milestone. So
why was it the hardest?
So it challenged you. So the mindset, and that's what I tell folks as me having the opportunity of being a dive officer, it's not always a physical piece, it's the mind, right? Working in an environment underwater, where you're working in environments that are cold, there's currents, you can't see anything, right? So then to have that emulated in a training environment, which you can imagine, people get very creative in those ways, to what we call, in Panama City, with Pool Week, and then also the challenges from a academic side, because you have to learn all of the medicines and things I remember today, Boyle's Law, right, partial pressures and stuff to understand what is happening in those types of environments, and then that are dangerous. I mean, that's doing work underwater is dangerous. So it's something that you want to pay attention to. So that's why it was hard. Is that physically, it was, but I think the words that I come out of dive school was CCC, cool, calm, and collected, right? That's what gets you through, because it has a large DOR, ring the bell, fallout, high percentage, 70-80% people don't make it through. So.
And, go a little bit, if you don't mind, a little deeper, because like what you're talking about is cool, calm, and collective, and the mindset, being a captain, being someone who trains people in the Coast Guard, but what you provide to them, because how it's so important in life that you have the right mindset. That's the difference between success and failure. If you have the wrong mindset, you're going to fail. And having that mindset, and like you said, the 3 C's that you just brought out, that's the thing. When everybody else is freaking out or panicking in a crisis, having those 3 C's, being calm and being able to that allows you to be a leader and be able to lead people to find the solution. So tell us a little bit more about, because it fits in the film industry, and we're going to go into the film industry later with you, but it fits the film industry. It fits all other areas of life too. And you got it in this environment, but you take it everywhere with you.
Yeah. So I think it's important. I mean, but as we go into that, but also I think what I've learned is, in this chapter of life is that you can't sustain that type of thing. You have to also continue to look back on, okay, am I taking care of John or taking care of Greg, right? Or in this case, myself, from both spiritual, mental, physical, kind of things. And I was raised, in an environment where you just continue to go, right? You continue to go. Failure is not an option, right? It's just, so that's come up, but also I think being aware of making sure that machine is taken care of, right? Again, nutritional value as well. So we tend to do that. So that helps that CCC, right? And then of course, just reps, right? Doing it, right? There's been a couple times people are like, literally they stopped me in my steps, or just people working around me, and questions that come up, go, how did you know to go in that direction? Sometimes it's like it's a good guess. It's a gut feeling, if you will.
Right.
And you guessed right. And you go do that, but it was a measured, risk based on the abundance of different things that you've touched on. So as we get in that, the more cool you get, more calm you get as anything else. If it's in, everyday life, raising kids, and which we all chant with that in itself sometimes will get you cool, calm, and collected.
Oh yeah. as we talked about that time, you think you've had challenges, and then you get those family challenges and those life challenges that make you realize, especially as guys, right, as men, realizing that, how do we deal with this? And just to kind of for a minute there, I know a big part of it, and it was part of our conversation too that time. But a good part of what you do is your faith as well. And so I don't know if you want to just mention that, but that's a big part that helps you get through those hard times as well, having that faith.
Oh, absolutely. I know you're a man of faith as well. It's a big part, and probably for the past 15 years or so, there's something I do every day, right? Even in my last job, being in Haiti, right? Is I sit still for, the first part of the day, 10 minutes to 20 minutes, and just be still. That, that part of being, getting your iron on, ready to face the day, but also in that spiritual part. But I take that, and I try to be thankful, right? But I look back the past 24, right, of hours meeting, and go, where are those blessings where, that I've had, or those things that I can either improve on? I'm not perfect, right? Or can find out different things, if it's family or, relationships or whatever it is. But I take that still time, right, to just kind of reset, think back, how can I do this, or smile, right? Take that time to smile. But I walk into each day going, literally, I'm going to put a smile on somebody's face, right? Every single day, right? So, life is tough, life is short, but it's like, we can't take all that, take things so seriously. So,
well, I do something similar. I used to do an hour of power, I would call in the morning. Then of course it got shortened and shortened and shortened.
Exactly, right.
But 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever you can grab. But it's that ability to every morning get up and say, what am I grateful for? No matter what I'm going through, no matter how hard it is, what am I grateful for? Yeah. Because that puts you in the right mindset, space. And then, like you said, if you take that attitude, I'm going to go out there and put a smile on somebody's face, it gives you a task. I do one thing, it comes from the SEALs. I make my bed every morning, so I have a success. So I have that morning success. I got that morning gratitude, and now life is good. And now we go out in the world and we try to do the best we can. Yep. And we deal with whatever life throws at us at that point, right?
Amen, brother. Amen.
Yeah, amen indeed. So, the other thing as part of your life, which I'm, totally impressed by, because, I dropped out of high school when I was 15. I eventually went back and got a degree and everything. But, I look at your life and, you're somebody who really has focused on education. You've succeeded on so many levels, and you're constantly, going to school, learning, doing those things that keep improving you. And I think that's a lesson for people as well, is that we always need to be learning. We always need to be growing. And that's such an important thing to do. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So another, what I'll use the word intentional piece of my life is to, is to continue to learn something, get some different, get a nugget from somewhere. Anytime I'm reading a couple books, right, and getting through that, if it's a spiritual or relationship type book, or just a professional book, or something I'm trying to drill down because I'm going to teach a subject or talk about it, or I'm just purely interested from an entrepreneurial standpoint. Some of the big stuff that's coming up, AI, right? This, that's a big deal. And understanding how that moves within the spectrum of the world, right? And all our energies, and just having that energy, speaking of energy. So I put intentional energy to learn or try to, improve myself as much as I can all the time, and leave that bandwidth to do that and to share it, right? That's the, I mentioned before at the top, but, you reach back, sideways, and forward. That's my, it's just kind of share and not, keep everything, in as much as you can, and then still walk away going, it may not be perfect, but, or to collaborate, right? Or to, that's another big part of it. But yeah, continue to, to develop and learn, keep this thing up here, minus the hair, right?
What books come to mind, if any, a couple of books that you would share that have been books that, have helped you, or you go to, they're your go-to books?
So one of the books that I enjoy, and I've read a few times, is Colin Powell's book, right? On the seven, or one, I can't remember the exact title. It's a Colin Powell book, and he's got these principles in there, and I'll read those principles, right? And one of the top, ones is, it's get mad and get over it, right? Right. One of those principles. But Colin Powell is an absolute, wonderful leader, soldier, father, just recently passed away, Secretary of State, right? Former Chief of Staff. He's has to be diverse, kind of in that spectrum. So, the title of the book, but I'm sure people know who Colin Powell is. And that book he published, one of his first ones, talking about his 10 principles, which I would do that. Other books that, literally I'll look down here. I have a book, right, that I'm actually starting to read, right? And it's called The Four Agreement, right? The Four Agreements.
Right.
And this is more kind of relationship on, kind of stuff that I'm just starting to read. And I have it right here in my bag. So a lot of that reading and having it is having it close by, right? So there you go.
Well, I know for me, I mean, I've been lucky. When I dropped out of high school at 15, I went on a learning journey that's continued to this day. I've read hundreds and hundreds of books, and it's probably my greatest passion in life is I got a new book that I'm going to read. It's a remake called The Fort Turning that I'm going to be picking up shortly. And it's about what's going on in the world today. But there's so many books, motivational books, biographies. Like you say, Colin Powell, he grew up in my neighborhood, the South Bronx, where I grew up. So, and I heard him speak at a motivational seminar many, many years ago. So, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I don't know the name of that book, but I'm
going to pull it up before we do the name of that book by Colin Powell.
Yeah. But, that's the thing for people, I think, to continue, especially now as the world keeps turning so fast and new things keep getting introduced, the need to stay abreast of learning is even more important than it even was when I was young. Now it's like really important because life keeps moving faster and faster and faster. So, there's no time to not keep up with it. It's like, do it, find the time and take advantage of it. Tell us a little what you can. I'm going to pivot a little bit more, and then I want to come to your other journeys. Well, two of them. One is a diplomat. As what did you do? Because diplomacy is such an important thing in the Coast Guard and in life. What did you do in that aspect? And I want to take you a little bit more on the Coast Guard experience before we pivot to, after all this stuff, film, producing, writing, acting. I want to get there. So, but before I do that, tell us about the Diplomat side, and then I want your last adventure with the Coast Guard, whatever you can tell us about that, and then we're going to pivot into the creative side.
Yeah. So that was the last thing I did. Just wrapped up that about a month or so ago. Another extraordinary opportunity that came knocking, right? That asked if I was interested in doing the particular role. It's it's called SDO Dad, Senior Defense Official, Defense Attaché. I didn't really know a lot about it. I knew I had interest in it years ago, and then as you put things away, then it was a fast-moving ask or request if I would consider doing that particular job to help our what I would call our full-time brother, in which as far as filling that position. So it lined up where I could check with family. It was good. My kids were a little older, not an issue there. The work I was doing, which is in the entertainment space, I was able to pause that and kind of take on that opportunity, which is an extraordinary opportunity. It's I call it a once in a career type ask to kind of go into that space. The Coast Guard in itself doesn't have a big foreign service program. So it was a 3-year requirement. The first year is all training. It's I think you mentioned before language. There's what they call defense attaché school, and then there's other types of training to work in that type of environment. As far as from a diplomatic or Department of State environment. So once you get through all that, then you actually get into country, and just a fabulous opportunity. And the things I can say, which are not in any it's not any classified realm, so to speak, or that. Not to say there's many things that job requires in that space, but it's literally just that. It's I mean, you're there. I was there as a senior advisor to the ambassador of Haiti, basically appointed by the Secretary of Defense, in this case, Secretary Austin, to be his rep, and then to collaborate with the other agencies within an embassy. And this is in general, right? And then also keep communication with, the COCOM in the area, combatant command, that is. Obviously, what we call it, the senior folks over in the Pentagon, and then Secretary of State stuff, and then there's also some things on the attaché side, working within the IC community on things, and then just you're literally having those relationships with your peer group or in that foreign country. So in this case, the foreign military or even up to the prime minister, the different diplomats from the other countries within that. So it's all relationship building or collaboration based on U.S. policies and the direction we're going from a country, and then specifically just in that defense or military realm. And then I'll say is in the collaboration that happens within the embassy to send one voice, one message, one policy, right? The ambassador represents the president of the United States, and then those policies that are exercised via that space, via Department of State, right? Ambassador works for Department of State, and you're literally working with every 3 and 4 letter alphabet, right? Every day, and then in this case in Haiti, as a phrase I say is that every day is Monday in Haiti.
That's
okay. Yeah.
And that means that you're basically you're scrambling every day.
Basically, right? I have a phenomenal team, that we try to we do the best we can with what we have. Usually it's limited resources, etc., and apply that going forward. But at the same note, at that high tempo, every day is Monday. You got to remind folks as that we got to take care of ourselves and sometimes say no, right? It's just we'll look at it a different day, and some people don't want to hear no's sometimes, but or we'll get back to you, or let's pull other ideas together. So
I'm gonna throw up a couple of pictures of you, and then we're gonna pivot into the creative side. But here's just some pictures. This is obviously you on one of the Coast Guard boats there.
Yep, that's was actually on one of the Haitian Coast Guard boats. And those gentlemen there are. I should put my glasses on, which would help. There we go. Are a couple Coast Guard members, and then some of them are security type protective guys. So,
and then this is another one of you here.
Yeah, so that was a rewarding time over at the combatant command. This time, this is Southcom, and the gentleman, I think he's he's one of the generals, Rivas. So he was in charge of all the reserve forces for the Army, and then this gentleman that I'm patting there is a guy that came to me temporarily that filled in a hole. At the time, great guy that paused his career to come out and help out. He's Haitian guy, speaks Creole, and was able to plug and play immediately to some of the things we were dealing with. So I had a chance to go out there and reward him or thank him, publicly for his sacrifice to his family to come serve.
And here's a picture that I had a chance to attend an event with you years ago. So
yeah, it's that was.
I'll put it back up.
Yeah, so that was Legion Medal. Oh, that was the Medal of Valor, one of the TV shows or something, right? Was that?
I believe so. And that's Medal of Valor. And
and then the guys in the picture was his wife. Don't remember her first name, but that was Ian Marks. He's one of the docs I call him the doc for the Coast Guard, and then of course yourself. You haven't aged a day, John. And that was I think 6 or 7 years ago.
I know it was a long time ago. I've been trying to keep up with you, man.
But yeah, going out, and then here I got the Colin Powell, My American Journey. That was the book.
My American Journey. That's right.
My first books. Right. Yep. I had my great friend is handling me this because it's like, oh no, here's the book. They were helping me in the background here, so how it goes. Dynamic.
Yes. Excellent. So let's pivot. I mean, so all this stuff, it's hard to believe sometimes. When people don't know somebody and they meet somebody, you have no idea who that person is, right? And obviously, when we met in a certain space in the world. But here you were, military, Coast Guard, Reserve, active duty, but then you're a creative. You're an actor, you're a writer, you're a producer, you're all these other things. How did that part of your life start and why? And then we're going to watch you in one of your acting roles that I accidentally shared a moment of, but go ahead.
Yeah. That was a great, another unexpected kind of thing, short story, 30 seconds to have some context in it. Well, my dad actually reminded me that I went to acting school when I was 13 or 14 or something. I totally forgot about it. So he's like, you were talking about that for, when you were, 12, 13. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I remember that now. But as I mentioned, entrepreneur, creative, you're always creating. I've always had that creative entrepreneurial spirit, or energy. And as I left active duty, and went into corporate world, and specifically for Pinkerton Government Services, where I was in the C-suite or vice president, phenomenal opportunity. It still wasn't. We're constantly evolving, right? We're constantly trying to move in a direction or be in a neighborhood that you want to be in as far as your professional career goes. Where things don't feel like work, right? It's just like you just want to go and, in this case, create. So that landed. Thankfully to my relationship I was in before, and it was in that creative space. I was married to a creative, and was able to meet some folks. And this guy, I never forget him. I'm going to put his name here, but Lino DeSalva, who happened to be an exec over at Disney, and I met him we were at some function or reception. He went over and he goes, "Okay, so I hear you're going to possibly leave corporate," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm headed out that kind of way." And he introduced me. He's like, "Hey, this industry thing is all about, relationships and who and getting, kind of stuff." And that's what he did. He's like, "Do you mind if I, talk to you about a couple things or introduce you to some stuff?" And I ended up segueing that into my first stuff, which is on sets. which was tech advising. You know, taking my skill sets that I've acquired in both law enforcement, Coast Guard, whatever, and applying that to the industry. But before I did do that, as I respected the industry and learned simple things, right? Like, what's a set? Who's a first? Who's a sec? Who's the P, right? Who are these P, right? You know, you do that through other things, being an extra or doing that. And your career, I think people say, you know, everyone's entry point is different, right? You know, and it's always evolving and whatnot. But that's how it all got, you know, kind of started. I just kind of was pointing direction, built some relationships, and people were like, hey, how about this? How about this, that? And so that was the beginning. 10,
so you got into, of all the things, and we'll come back to going a little further with it, but acting, and I'm going to show a clip now of you actually acting it, and then you can explain what this is after we watch it.
What's up, little bro?
What's going on, Greg?
Good. How you doing?
Good. Appreciate the drop.
No worries. A little busy out here.
Yeah, a little bit.
Everything all right?
Yeah, I'm good. You?
I'm good. Want you to know. I just got my little bro's back.
Appreciate it. How you doing?
Doing good. Doing good. Hey, when you come back to the CIA?
Nice.
So that was a little TV show, right? Was it a TV show?
It was a concept pilot we were shooting. I got asked, you know, be involved in. Didn't like you know a lot of things don't get, you know, people create a lot of things, but you know only 10% ever make it to the big screen or little screen or any screen. But I like to always reflect on just great opportunities to work on scripts, and that particular thing with PJ there that we met, something he wrote and did, and that's what you know all about that collaboration. That's what I did. He's asked if I can do it. I can't pay a whole lot, but I can, you know, you can bring stuff. And a lot of things I like to do is things that I've worked in that environment, which makes it easy. But as I said, I learned an acting coach, learning all that stuff. You know, I mean, we have to apply that. But I got other interests as I kept going down that acting road.
And what do you have, you know, what's your journey now? Obviously, you're back out into reserve again, and you're getting back a little bit into the creative world again, and putting your feet back into that as a writer, as a producer, as an actor. What's some of that journey looking like for you now going forward?
Well, yeah, so it's an interesting time right now because you know, everyone's on strike, right? Especially the WGA, the Screen Actors Guild, which I voted to support, and to it should strike for some of these things that are being discussed with AI and streaming and what's fair, because it hadn't been in the direction it's going. And I do look forward to getting out there in, you know, the help with, you know, carrying pickets and stuff, which I will be doing. But as I transition, I'm in this transition mode. So I'm coming out of a bubble, right? Where and I decided to, you know, take 60 to 90 days off to just reset, new chapter, you know, kids, family, parent, you know, all the things that happen in life that are going on, our relationships, and then just really get back grounded. You know, and as I segue back into the industry, having some meetings, doing some stuff. I met with some partners that talking about some creative ideas in the last couple of weeks. Right now, I'm sitting in New York, right, doing hanging out, just reacquiring relationships, but just, you know, settling down. So what I see, I'll be back in Los Angeles in about a week. I'll do some more meetings and create, right? I continue to create. I got some great ideas that I've been outlining and doing stuff. So that's my intent is to continue to, you know, create some, not only storybooks, but outlines and on some ideas that I have, and then working with some of my, you know, writing partners to bring those to fruition and have it timed out right. So once the industry starts coming back, which I think, you know, it's going to be a little while based on what everything's coming, but up to including, you know, my agents like, hey, you get back into the, you know, acting space or all that. I'm like, you're right now. It's like, I don't know. I'm going to, you know, kind of talk a little bit and kind of do. I'm thankful I have, you know, opportunities, you know, to do that. But I'm excited about, you know, the future in reference to into the entertainment space from especially a producer side. I'm looking more not in front of the camera, but behind and creating. I get excited about which you can probably see, creating content, and then getting into that more the WGA. I got a phenomenal mentor that's one of my other meetings I'm going to have with him in the near future. Big time writer, director, that we shored up a relationship 3 or 4 years ago from the WGA writing program, which I was the veteran writing program, which I was able to selected to participate in, and then by that space, creating some great relationships and then schooling with a couple of my mentors, which is what I've come to say. It's and it's just not the entertainment; it's all about relationships and many things we do. So.
And you also been part of, and that's how we came across each other too, in all the different layers. But the Veterans of Media Entertainment, VME, which is a group of military veterans that are in the film industry on every, people from every different category of career, right?
Absolutely, great organization that derived from other, and they're continuing to, I'm still part of that organization to allow a pathway and introduction to many of the military or service member types or first responders, whatever it is, to get introduced to that. A lot of folks, as I call, getting off the bus, coming to LA going, I'm going to work in the space. But VMA has done a fabulous job to provide some educational types of things where it's safe. And then I will say, I'll add to it, the value that military members bring to a set is phenomenal, right? They know how to work in a team. They know how to work fast paced. And oftentimes I've had conversations with directors and other folks, and I explain that to them, that it's really no different, right? In many ways of a planning for an operation, in a military environment or a law enforcement environment, whatever it is, that doing the set, right? It's a short-term thing. Everyone comes together, all these different entities come together, in the industry to make something. Same thing in the, military component. A lot of energy up front. The only part I always emphasize is that sometimes on the military side, the input maybe, or the exit may be a little different, right? Depending on what you're doing, but the energy and the teamwork and collaboration, and sometimes friends for life that happen are the same.
And, I know when I got involved, because I ended up getting involved by doing some training videos. I got line produced for the U.S. Marine Corps, and that opened up a door for me. And that because of that door opening, I started saying, well, what else can I do? Because I was in Hollywood to help military vets, and I started to do, trainings, and I met the people from VME when it was VFT. And so I started to do trainings back then. And, and it gave me an opportunity to take what skills I had and share them. And like you said, it was like I found it as a win-win, because when I hired military vets on my sets, I was able to get people who were both able to lead, but also take orders and do the job. So they were willing to do whatever it took. At the same time, if they needed to step into leadership, they could step in leadership. So they kind of have both. And it was always a good relationship. And it was always a good experience for me to do that. So
it's the can-do positive attitude, we'll get it done is phenomenal in sets, and a lot of the leadership wants, they desire that, and adapting to everything, it changes on sets. The same thing in that environment, and how you operate under and use that CCC, right?
That's right.
To keep moving forward, right? So it's
it's like I always say, there's a meme out there that says, because I'm a line producer primarily as well as producer, but they say, line producing is easy. It's like riding a bike, except the bike is on fire, you're on fire, and everything's on fire. And in the middle of all that, you're supposed to be calm and find the solutions. But that's how you do it, is because if you freak out because everything is going crazy, then you're not going to be part of the solution. You're going to be part of the problem. And that's not the purpose of leadership. Leadership is to, help find the solutions. That's your job. So, what kind of genres, anything that you specifically, and we got a few more minutes, and I want to take us back to the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
We're going to do a little bit. I'm going to show a video there, and we're going to talk a little bit more to wrap up on the Coast Guard.
Okay.
But anything on this, on the industry that you want to touch on before we kind of move back a little bit?
No, I look forward. I'm thankful, like I've had some the direction kind of going. I look forward to getting back into my rhythm of writing, but also change. I was just talking to one of my good friend who hopefully we'll collaborate and do some things with, and in the future. But how the industry's changed, I've been out of it for the last 3 years, right? So I've had to open up some space to go, okay, what's happening now? And then of course now, the strike part that's happening for good reasons. But that drama, real life story type stuff, minor of action. I always say like maybe Blue Bloods and meets This Is Us, right? Type show. I kind of get in that, but something I've learned from just the creative space is that the best stories are the real stories, right? That come out, and there's a lot of those out there, which you're fully of it. We've talked about different things, and then where you're going to apply that. So I look forward to getting into a rhythm, again, starting actually this week of writing some things down, getting some outlines, getting, what the flavor, what does a story look like? What's the whole season look like? That's fun. Right. And I have some good ideas and stuff. Some of it's from the world I was just playing in, right. Which is absolutely, some of the stuff we've dealt with, things I can't even make up. Right. But thankfully I was smart enough to write some things down, if you will, to try to there's some real richness and I think for sure interest in some of the stuff, not to mention some of the other things I had already been working on as I transition back. So look forward to collaborate, look forward to get back into that space, look forward to a few more meetings I'm going to have with some ideas. People have some great ideas. I was recently approached about doing a couple things as an actor again. But we'll see, right? It's that's not going to happen in the near future, but as you and I have talked about some things, but like I said, I'm thankful and to have some opportunities and some conversations more to have in that entertainment space.
And hopefully we find a way to collaborate on something as well. Let me just pivot now to a little video from the Coast Guard, and we'll kind of take it out on that one.
Nice.
Let's see if I can get that one up there. And here we go. And tell me if you see it.
I see it.
All right, here we go.
What makes a life a good one? Is it our adventures? Or the friends we find along the way? Is it the challenges we conquer together? Or how we put our talents to use? Maybe it's the people's lives we touched every single day. So, what makes a life a good one? You'll have to figure that one out for yourself.
GoCoastGuard.com.
There you go. So on that, obviously, as you're still in, the thing is always recruitment is always an important part of. So the Coast Guard needs people, so it's a great organization to join, and you've had a lifetime to prove that. Yeah,
it's what a great kind of bookend, if or commercial break, if we call it. Talk to some production terms in here, but. Yeah, it's been a great opportunity, and this ended on that note. I mean, I will give a plug to the Coast Guard, that's shamelessly. It's been one of the best decisions I made 34 years ago to get involved with the organization. It offers so much, and we're in hiring mode, right? And I'll hit on a few things and throw out there and throw back up here. One of the things I have, which you just said, to find out anything about the Coast Guard is. GoCoastGuard.com. Just like I said, GoCoastGuard.com. And you can find out about, our scholarship programs, which, that helps those folks that are in college looking for a career, looking for excitement, looking for skills to build that take them out, and you can wind up anywhere. You can wind up in the entertainment space, right? Doing things or in that space, but you have opportunities in the reserve, which I call part-time force, which you can serve part-time, which you can find out as well. Then there's our academy. If you want to go to school, the Coast Guard, just like all the other services, they have a service academy. We have an academy. And then of course, just a traditional rate, which is boot camp, which I was a founder of boot camp. Not a founder of, but actually a participant. That's an interesting boot camp. starting off from the bottom, to do that at our training center in Cape May. So we're hiring. Plug there. Go to gocoastguard.com to find out anything about the Coast Guard. And of course, if someone wants to reach out to me directly, they can do that, via yourself to help with that or answer any questions. What I always like to do is I like to at least put people talking to the right people, right? That consensus or not consensus, but the collaboration piece or introductions or whatever it is. But thanks for asking or mentioning that at the end. I'm glad to end it on that note, if you will.
Hey, well, Greg, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you. I'm honored to know you, brother, and thank you for all your service that you've done on so many levels. It's been a blessing to call you a brother and a friend, man. So thank you so much. Back at you, and I look forward to us collaborating in the future, man. Wish you the best with everything.
All right, thanks, John. Thanks for the time. Appreciate it. Thanks for your service. Thanks for what you're doing here again. Have the rest of a great weekend, and we'll see you out there. We'll see you in the field, bro.
All right, and see everybody next week. If you enjoyed the show, come here next Sunday. Hope you were inspired by Greg's story and his powerful sense of purpose and mission in the Coast Guard and in life. So join us next Sunday as well, and share the show with all your friends. Have a great one.
Yeah.